My son announced it at the reading of the will, with a triumphant smile I'd never seen on him before. Dad left me the company and the house. You aren't getting anything. My daughter-in-law, Chelsea, celebrated. She literally celebrated, clapping like she was at a show, in that emerald green dress that probably cost more than the monthly salary of 3 employees. I was sitting in the back of the room, my hands crossed in my lap, observing the scene as if it were a movie. I smiled. It was a small smile, but deliberate. I leaned forward and said with a calmness that made everyone fall silent, "My lawyer. Should I tell them, or do you want to tell them?" The glass Chelsea was holding slipped from her hand. The crystal shattered against the marble floor. Water splashed everywhere. Nobody moved to clean it up. "My son," Michael yelled, and his voice came out higher-pitched than he intended. "Tell us what?" Chelsea grabbed his arm hard, her red nails digging into the sleeve of his suit. Her face had gone from euphoria to terror in a matter of seconds. Andrew, my lawyer, slowly stood up, opening his leather briefcase. The sound echoed in the room like a gunshot. He took out a thick folder, full of documents organized with colored tabs, and placed it on the table with a crisp thud. "But let me tell you how we got here. Let me tell you how my own son, the child I carried in my belly, whom I nursed, whom I raised, came to look me in the eye and tell me I deserved nothing. And let me tell you why that moment, that horrible, humiliating moment, was exactly what I had been waiting for months. My name is Eleanor Miller. I am 68 years old, and for 45 years I was married to Robert Sterling. To the world, Robert was the tycoon, the businessman, the visionary behind Sterling Logistics, a distribution and supply chain company that moved more than $50 million a year. But the truth that very few people knew, was very different. Robert was my partner, yes. He was my husband, yes. But the company was mine. It always was. I founded it. I put up the initial capital. I made the toughest decisions for 4 decades. But that's something my son and daughter-in-law will discover soon enough. Michael was born when I was 26 years old. He was my only son, my treasure, my reason for living. I raised him with values, or at least I thought I did. I taught him about hard work, about honesty, about respect. Robert and I made sure he had the best education, the best opportunities. But something changed 5 years ago, when he met Chelsea at a business conference in Orlando. She was a public relations assistant for a competitor firm, 29 years old, ambitious, with an artificial beauty that came from well-done cosmetic surgery and professional makeup. From the first day I saw her, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't the intuition of a jealous mother-in-law. It was something deeper. The way she looked at our house when she came to dinner for the first time. The way her eyes calculated the value of every painting, every piece of furniture, every detail. The way she asked questions about the company, about the properties, about the investments. Robert told me I was being paranoid. Michael said I was being unfair, that Chelsea was just showing genuine interest in our lives. They got married 6 months after meeting. I didn't agree with the rush. But what could I do? My son was in love, or at least that's what he thought. The wedding cost $120,000. Robert and I paid every cent because Chelsea didn't have any family, or so she said. Later, I found out she did have family. She just didn't want us to see where she really came from. The first 2 years were tolerable. Chelsea played the role of the perfect daughter-in-law. Smiles at family dinners, gifts at Christmas, sweet words when people were around. But when we were alone, or when she thought I couldn't hear her, she was another person. I heard her tell Michael more than once that I was a burden, that Robert and I were too old to keep making decisions for the company, that they should have more control. Robert got sick 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave him 6 months. He lived for 2 years, fighting every day with a dignity that still breaks my heart to remember. During those 2 years, I took complete control of the company. Michael was in charge of the operations area, but the final decisions went through me. It had always been that way, but now it was official, and Chelsea hated it. I saw her change. I saw how her fake sweetness turned into open bitterness. She started making comments at family gatherings. "Ellie, don't you think it's time to retire? You must be exhausted." "Ellie, running a company is too stressful for a woman your age." "Ellie, Michael and I have been talking, and we think it would be better if you focused on taking care of Robert and we handled the business." I smiled. I nodded. And I kept signing contracts, closing deals, expanding the company while Robert rested at home connected to his oxygen tank. My husband died 4 months ago. The funeral was beautiful. Michael cried. Chelsea did too, although her tears seemed rehearsed. Hundreds of people came, employees, partners, friends of decades. Everyone talked about Robert as if he had built the empire alone, and I let them. Because that was the agreement Robert and I had from the beginning. He would be the public face. I would be the brains behind it. It worked for 45 years. But now Robert was gone, and Michael, influenced by Chelsea, believed it was his time to claim what was never his. A week after the funeral, Michael came to my house. Our house. The house I bought with my own money in 1982. He sat across from me in the living room with Chelsea beside him and told me we needed to talk about the future. "Mum, Dad named me president of the company before he died. I think it's time for you to transition. You can be an advisor if you want, but Chelsea and I are going to live here. This house is too big for you alone. You could move to the guest house on the property in the Hamptons. We'd be close, but you'd have your space." I looked at him in silence. Chelsea had that smile, that damn smile that said, "We did it." "And what if I don't want to move?" I asked calmly. Michael sighed, as if I were a stubborn child. "Mum, be reasonable. Dad left everything arranged. The will is clear. The company is mine. The properties are mine. You'll be taken care of course. But you can't keep making decisions anymore. Not at your age. Not after everything you've been through." I stood up. I told them I needed time to think about it. Michael nodded, satisfied. Chelsea gave me a fake hug before they left. That night I called Andrew. Andrew had been Robert's and my lawyer for 20 years. He was a meticulous, brilliant, discreet man. I told him everything. I told him Michael claimed to have a will where Robert left him everything. Andrew was silent for a long moment. "Ellie, Robert and I spoke 2 weeks before his death. He never signed a will. He said everything was in order, that you knew what needed to be done." I felt something cold run down my back. "So, the will Michael has is fake." Andrew took a deep breath. "That's what it looks like. And if it's fake, someone fabricated it. Someone who had a lot to gain." The next 3 months were a silent investigation. Andrew hired a private investigator named David Carver, a former federal police detective who had retired to open his own agency. David was good, very good. In 2 weeks, he already had information that chilled me to the bone. Chelsea had hired a corrupt lawyer, a man named Vincent Moretti, who had a history of document fraud in other states. They had fabricated the will using a false notary. They had forged Robert's signature with such precision that it almost looked real. Almost. But Andrew knew my husband's signature better than anyone. He had reviewed thousands of documents signed by him over 2 decades, and this signature had inconsistencies. The pressure of the stroke was different. The angle of the final R didn't match. They were microscopic details. But they were there. David showed me the documents one afternoon in Andrew's office. We had closed the blinds. I was sitting in front of the desk, my hands trembling as I reviewed each page. "Mrs. Miller, there's more," David said in a grave voice. He took out a manila envelope and slid it toward me. Inside were photographs, many photographs. Chelsea with a man who wasn't my son, a man about 50 years old. Grey hair, expensive suit, a predatory smile. They were in elegant restaurants, at the entrance of a hotel, getting into a silver sports car. In one of the photos, they were kissing. I felt the air leave my lungs. "His name is Richard Vance," David continued. "Owner of the Grand Union chain of restaurants and bars in the city. Estimated net worth of $15 million. Married, 3 children. And according to our investigation, he has been your daughter-in-law's lover for the last 2 years. 2 years. Since before Robert got sick. While my husband was fighting cancer, while I spent entire nights in the hospital holding his hand, Chelsea was with another man, planning how to rob us." But that wasn't all. David pulled out his laptop and played an audio file. The quality wasn't perfect, but the voices were unmistakable. It was Chelsea talking to Richard in what sounded like a hotel room. "The old man won't last much longer. The doctors gave him weeks. As soon as he dies, Michael will inherit everything. The old lady is easy to manipulate. She's so broken she'll sign anything just to avoid a fight with her son." Richard's voice responded with a cruel laugh. "And after that, my love? How much longer do we have to keep up this charade?" Chelsea sighed. "A few more months. I need to make sure everything is in Michael's name first. Then you and I are out. We'll sell the properties, liquidate what we can of the company, and disappear. Michael will be left with the crumbs." I stopped the audio. I couldn't listen anymore. Andrew put his hand on mine. "I am so sorry, Ellie. I know this is devastating, but now we have everything we need." I looked up. My eyes were burning, but not with tears. It was fury, a cold, controlled fury I had never felt in my life. "I want you to keep investigating. I want to know every detail, every move, every lie, and I want us to prepare everything for the day of the will reading." Andrew frowned. "Ellie, there won't be an official will reading. Robert didn't leave a will." I smiled. "I know, but Michael thinks there is. Chelsea thinks there is. And they will want to have an official reading to humiliate me publicly, so everyone sees they won. So let them. Let them organize their little show, and we are going to ruin it." 6 more weeks passed. During that time, Michael and Chelsea pressured me more and more. They came to the house 3 more times. Each visit was more insistent than the last. "Mum, we've already scheduled the will reading for October 15th. It's going to be in the company boardroom. We want all the important employees to be present. It's what Dad would have wanted." What Dad would have wanted. As if they knew anything about what Robert wanted. My husband had told me 1,000 times that the company was mine, that he was only the public face, that when he died, I should move forward without fear. But he never imagined that his own son would try to rob me. On October 14th, one day before the supposed will reading, Carol came to visit me. Carol had been my best friend since high school. We had known each other since we were 14. She had been by my side for every important moment in my life. My wedding, Michael's birth, Robert's illness, the funeral. And now she was here, sitting in my living room, drinking Earl Grey tea while I told her everything. When I finished, Carol put her cup down on the table so hard I thought it would break. "That damn woman. That snake. Ellie, how have you been able to keep calm all these months? I would have strangled her. I laughed without humor, because if I lose my calm, I lose control. And I need to have control tomorrow. I need everything to go perfectly. Carol took my hands. Her face was full of concern. Are you going to be okay? Do you want me to go with you? I need you to go. I need you to be there, sitting where you can see me, because I'm going to need to see a friendly face when everything blows up. Carol nodded. I'll be there, and I'm going to enjoy every second of watching that woman fall. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed up reviewing every document, every photograph, every recording. Andrew had prepared everything meticulously. We had certified copies of the company's original articles of incorporation, stating that I was the majority owner with 70% of the shares. Robert only had 30%. We had the prenuptial agreement we signed before getting married, which clearly established that the assets each of us brought into the marriage would remain individual property. We had the evidence of the will forgery, with reports from 3 graphology experts confirming the signature was not Robert's. We had the photographs of Chelsea with Richard, the recordings of their conversations, the hotel records, the text messages that David had managed to hack from Chelsea's phone. Everything. We had everything. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I got up, showered, and dressed carefully. I chose a pearl grey pantsuit, elegant but discreet, mid-heels, minimal makeup. I wanted to look like what I was, a grieving widow, dignified, serene, not threatening. I wanted them to underestimate my presence until the last minute. Andrew picked me up at 9. In the car, we went over the plan one last time. You're going to let Michael read the fake will completely. Don't interrupt him. Let him finish. Let Chelsea celebrate. Let them feel victorious. Then you step in. Exactly. I'm going to present the evidence in order. First, the will forgery, then the true ownership of the company, and then, if necessary, the proof of Chelsea's infidelity and her plan with Richard. I looked out the car window. The city rushed past my eyes. I remembered when Robert and I were young, when we built everything from nothing, when we dreamed of leaving a legacy for our son. We never imagined that son would betray us. Or maybe Robert did imagine it. Maybe that's why he never signed the will Michael was so expecting. Maybe my husband knew, deep down in his heart, that Michael wasn't ready, that he had lost his way. We arrived at the Sterling Logistics offices at 15 minutes before 10. The building was imposing. 10 floors of glass and steel in the city's financial center. I had personally chosen the land 25 years ago. I had supervised every detail of the construction. This building was my pride, and today I was going to defend it. The boardroom was on the top floor. When we got out of the elevator, I could see through the glass doors that there were already many people inside. Company executives, some trusted employees. Robert's cousins, whom I hadn't seen in years and who had surely come expecting to receive something. And in front of everyone, as if they were the kings of an empire, were Michael and Chelsea. My son wore an impeccable black suit. Chelsea wore that emerald green dress, which matched an emerald necklace that probably cost $30,000. Company money, I was sure. Money that she already considered hers. I took a deep breath. Andrew looked at me. Ready? More than ever. We entered the room. Several people turned to look at me, some with pity, others with curiosity. Michael saw me and his expression hardened. Chelsea, for her part, gave me a smile that was meant to be compassionate, but her eyes betrayed it with contempt. I approached them with slow, deliberate steps. Good morning, Michael. Chelsea. My son barely nodded, without getting out of his chair. Chelsea leaned in and gave me a kiss on the cheek that felt like poison. Ellie, so glad you came early. We wanted to talk to you before everything started. This is going to be difficult for you, I'm sure. But we want you to know you'll always have a place in our family. Our home will always be open to you. Our home, the house that I bought. I bit my tongue and smiled sweetly. Thank you, dear. That's very kind of you. Andrew and I headed to the back of the room. I chose 2 chairs in the last row near the door. I wanted a complete view of everything. I wanted to see every face when the bomb dropped. Carol arrived 5 minutes later. She saw me immediately and came to sit beside me. She squeezed my hand hard. I'm here, she whispered. No matter what happens, I'm with you. I squeezed back. At 10 o'clock sharp, Michael stood up and gently tapped the table to get everyone's attention. The murmur of conversations stopped. All eyes turned to him. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming on this important day for our family. As you know, my father, Robert Sterling, passed away 4 months ago. He was an extraordinary man, a visionary, a leader, and although he is no longer with us physically, his legacy continues. He paused dramatically. I could see he was enjoying this. Today, we will proceed with the official reading of his will. My father left very clear instructions on how he wanted his assets and his company to be handled, and it is my duty, as his son, to ensure his wishes are carried out to the letter. Chelsea stood beside him, a possessive hand on his shoulder. She held a folder in her other hand, a folder that I knew contained fake documents. Several executives exchanged glances. Some looked uncomfortable. They knew the real dynamic of the company. They knew that I had been the one making the important decisions for years. But no one said anything, because at that moment, Michael held the power, or so they thought. Michael opened the folder and took out several papers. He held them up so everyone could see them. This is the last will and testament of Robert Sterling, dated January 10th of this year, just 3 months before his passing. It is properly signed and notarized. He began to read. His voice was firm, clear, full of false authority. I, Robert Sterling, being of sound mind, declare this document as my last will. First, I leave the totality of shares in Sterling Logistics to my son, Michael Sterling, who has demonstrated the necessary vision and leadership to continue the legacy of this company. There were murmurs, some of approval, others of surprise. Michael continued, his voice gaining confidence with every word. Second, I leave the primary residence located at 245 Maple Drive, as well as the 3 vacation properties in the Hamptons, to my son Michael Sterling. Third, I leave all bank accounts, investments, and financial assets in the name of Robert Sterling to my son Michael Sterling. I watched Chelsea squeeze Michael's shoulder. Her eyes glittered. She was calculating, adding, counting the money she believed was already hers. Michael paused again. This time, he looked directly to where I was sitting. His expression was a strange mix of triumph and something that almost looked like guilt. Almost. Fourth, to my wife, Eleanor Miller, widow of Sterling, I grant a monthly allowance of $500, subject to annual review by the new president of the company. I also grant her the right to reside in the guest house located on the Hamptons property, provided she does not interfere with the family's administrative and financial decisions. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the ticking of the clock on the wall, my own heart pounding in my ears. $500. After 45 years of marriage, after building everything, after investing my inheritance, my time, my entire life. Chelsea was the first to break the silence. She started clapping, slowly at first, then with more enthusiasm. Congratulations, darling. Your father knew exactly what he was doing. He knew you were the one to carry on his vision. A few people joined the applause. Not many. Most looked uncomfortable, looking away, avoiding my gaze. Carol, beside me, was trembling with rage. Her knuckles were white from clenching her fists. But she kept her promise. She didn't say anything. She just waited. Michael folded the papers and put them back in the folder. His expression was now more relaxed, as if a weight had been lifted. I know this can be difficult to hear for some, especially for you, Mom. But Dad made these decisions thinking about the company's future. You've worked hard for many years, and you deserve to rest. The house on the beach is beautiful. You'll be very comfortable there. And the $500 a month will be perfectly enough if you learn to manage it. Chelsea let out a giggle. I could see she was making an effort to contain it, but she couldn't. The laugh came out as a small snort that she tried to disguise with a cough. Michael continued, oblivious or indifferent to the cruelty of his words. Besides, you'll always be welcome to visit us. This will still be your family. It's just that now, well, things have to change. You can't keep making decisions in the company anymore. Not at your age, Mum. It's time for you to rest. At my age? As if 68 years made me a mental invalid. As if all the decades of experience, of knowledge, of building business relationships meant nothing. I stood up slowly. The movement caught everyone's attention. The entire room turned to look at me. I walked forward with measured steps. My heels echoed on the wood floor. Every step was a statement. I reached where Michael and Chelsea were standing. My son looked at me with a mix of confusion and annoyance. Chelsea had that frozen smile on her face. Mum, if you want to say something, you can, but please keep it brief. We have to continue with other administrative matters. I ignored Michael. I turned to Andrew, who was still sitting at the back with his briefcase on his lap. I held his gaze for a long moment. He acknowledged it, almost imperceptibly. It was the signal. I smiled. It was a small, calm, almost sweet smile. And then I said the words I had been rehearsing in my mind for weeks. My lawyer. Should I tell them? Or do you want to tell them? The effect was immediate and dramatic. The glass of water Chelsea was holding fell from her hands, as if it suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. The crystal shattered against the marble floor, with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. The water spread, forming a puddle that quickly extended toward Michael's feet. No one moved to clean it up. Everyone was frozen, looking at me. Michael paled. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. And then he yelled, in a voice that sounded more high-pitched and desperate than he probably intended. "Tell us what? What are you talking about?" Chelsea grabbed his arm hard. Her nails dug into the fabric of his suit. I saw her swallow. The color had completely drained from her face. The perfect makeup couldn't hide the terror in her eyes. Andrew stood up. The sound of his briefcase opening echoed in the tense silence of the room. He took out that thick folder, the one we had prepared so carefully for months. He placed it on the boardroom table with a dry thump that made several people jump in their seats. "With all due respect, Mr. Sterling," Andrew began with that professional, cold voice he had perfected in 30 years of legal practice. "The document you just read has absolutely no legal validity." Michael took a step forward, his face reddening. "That's ridiculous. I have the will right here. It's signed and notarized. My father did it in front of witnesses." Andrew didn't flinch. He opened the folder and took out the first set of documents. "What you have, Mr. Sterling, is a falsified document, and I have the evidence to prove it." Chelsea let out a strangled sound. Michael turned to her, seeking support, for her to reassure him, to tell him everything was fine. But she wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on Andrew. on that folder, as if she could see her whole life crumbling before her eyes. Andrew placed the first document on the table, turning it so everyone could see. This is a graphological analysis conducted by 3 independent experts, all certified internationally. All 3 reached the same conclusion. The signature on the will that Mr. Michael just read does not belong to Robert Sterling. Michael snatched the document from the table. His eyes frantically scanned the pages, searching for something, anything that would disprove what he was hearing. "This is impossible. I saw my father sign this. I was there." "Where?" Andrew asked calmly. "Where exactly did you see your father sign this document? Who else was present? Can you give us names?" Michael's silence was revealing. He swallowed. He looked at Chelsea. She avoided his gaze. I was standing next to them, watching as everything began to fall apart. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and pain, because this was my son, the boy I had raised, and he was discovering that he had betrayed me, or that he had been manipulated into betraying me. I still wasn't sure which was worse. Andrew continued, relentless. "But there's more, much more." He pulled out another set of documents. "These are the records of the notary who supposedly certified the will, a man named Luis Ramirez, with an office on Morelos Street. The problem is that Luis Ramirez died 2 years ago. His license was cancelled. His office closed. Any document with his seal subsequent to March of 2023 is, by definition, fraudulent." The murmurs in the room turned into choked exclamations. Several people stood up to get a better look at the documents. One of the executives, a man named David Henderson, who had worked with Robert for 20 years, approached the table and examined the papers with a serious expression. Michael dropped the documents. His face had gone from furious red to pale white. He turned to Chelsea with eyes full of confusion and something deeper. Fear. "Chelsea, you told me you knew a trustworthy lawyer. You told me he would take care of everything, that Dad had gone to his office and signed everything before he died." Chelsea took a step back. Her lips trembled. I just wanted to help. I thought that was the real will. The lawyer told me everything was in order." Andrew looked directly at her. "The lawyer? Are you referring to Vincent Moretti?" Chelsea froze. It was like watching an animal caught in a car's headlights. "How do you know that name?" she whispered. "Because Mr. Moretti has a criminal record for document fraud in 3 different states. He was suspended from the Bar Association 5 years ago, and according to our investigation, you hired him specifically to fabricate this false will." The room erupted. Voices rose, people standing up, some executives shouting questions, others taking out their phones. Michael looked at Chelsea with an expression I had never seen on him. It was pure horror. "What did you do?" His voice came out as a broken whisper. "What the hell did you do, Chelsea?" She shook her head, tears running down her face, ruining the perfect makeup. No, it's not like that. They're lying. They're trying to confuse us. Your mother always hated me. She's making all this up because she doesn't want us to have what's rightfully ours." I took a step forward. My voice came out cold, controlled, full of an authority I hadn't used in years. "What's rightfully mine, Chelsea, is what was always mine." She looked at me with distilled hatred. "You're nothing. You were just the wife. Robert built all this. You were just here for decoration." Andrew intervened before I could respond. "Mrs. Sterling, if you allow me." He pulled out another set of documents. "This is the original Articles of Incorporation for Sterling Logistics, dated March 15th, 1978. He passed the document to Michael. My son took it with trembling hands. I saw his eyes move from left to right as he read. And then they stopped. They were fixed on a specific line. His face completely transformed. As you can see, Andrew continued, the company was founded by Eleanor Miller with her own capital from a family inheritance. Robert Sterling came in as a minority partner 3 years later, in 1981, with a 30% stake. Mrs. Miller has always been the owner of 70% of the shares. Always. The silence was so profound that I could hear my own breathing. Michael looked up from the document. He was looking at me as if he were seeing me for the first time in his life. But you never said anything. You always let everyone believe Dad was the owner. Why? Because that was the agreement your father and I made when we got married. He would be the public face of the company. I would manage the actual operations. It worked perfectly for 45 years. Michael shook his head, still processing the information. So all this time you have been... Yes, I have been the owner, the one making the final decisions, the one signing the important contracts, the one who saved the company during the 2008 financial crisis, when your father was too sick to work. Chelsea let out a hysterical laugh. No, this has to be a lie. It has to be another fake document. Michael, you can't believe this. She's desperate. She's making things up so she doesn't lose everything. Andrew pulled out more papers. These are the company's financial statements for the last 20 years, all signed by Mrs. Eleanor Miller as president and CEO. These are the contracts with our main clients, signed by her. These are the property deeds, all in her name. The prenuptial agreement she signed with Robert clearly established the separation of assets. Each document he placed on the table was another blow, another piece of reality destroying the fantasy that Chelsea and Michael had built. One of the executives, David Henderson, the chief financial officer, stood up. Mrs. Miller, I can confirm all this. I have worked directly with you for the last 15 years. All major decisions always went through your approval. Mr. Sterling was the company ambassador, but you were the one who really ran it. Other executives nodded. Some even seemed relieved that the truth was finally coming out. Michael slumped into a chair. His head was in his hands. I could see his body shaking. Chelsea, for her part, had backed up against the wall. Her eyes darted from Andrew to me, from the documents to Michael, looking for an exit that didn't exist. I looked at my son. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, the pain, the humiliation and he had tried to put me through, my heart broke seeing him like this. Michael, I said softly. He lifted his head. His eyes were red. Tell me the truth. Did you know the will was fake? He shook his head violently. No, I swear I didn't. Chelsea told me she had found the will among Dad's papers. She told me a family friend lawyer had helped him get everything organized. I believed her. I turned to Chelsea. So you also fooled him, not just me, your own husband. She didn't respond. She just stood there, her back against the wall, breathing heavily. Andrew spoke again. Mrs. Sterling, I have to inform you that we have filed a formal complaint with the District Attorney's Office for document forgery and fraud. The investigation is already underway. Mr. Vincent Moretti was arrested this morning, and according to his statements, you hired him and paid him $50,000 to fabricate the fake will. Chelsea collapsed. She literally slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor. The emerald green dress wrinkled around her. The emerald necklace shone grotesquely against her pale skin. Michael jumped to his feet. The chair fell backward with a crash. $50,000? Where did you get $50,000, Chelsea? She looked at him with empty eyes. From the savings account. Our savings account. The one we were going to use for... Michael let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. For our new house. For the baby we wanted to have. You used our future to steal from my mother. Chelsea began to cry for real now. Great sobs that shook her entire body. But there was no sympathy in that room. Everyone looked at her with disgust. I just wanted us to have a better life. Your mother has so much and we had so little. It's not fair. It's not fair that she has everything and we have nothing. Carol, who had remained silent all this time, stood up. Her voice was full of indignation. Nothing? You live in a house Ellie gave you as a wedding gift. You drive a car she bought. Your husband has an executive position in a company she built. You've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on clothes, jewelry, and travel with this family's money. And you say you have nothing? Chelsea didn't respond. She had nothing left to say. The truth had come out, and there was no way to hide it. But I knew this wasn't over. There was one more piece. The piece that would make all this go from a simple forgery to something much darker and more personal. I looked at Andrew. He understood. The time had come to reveal the rest. Andrew took his laptop from the briefcase. He opened it on the table and waited for it to turn on. The silence in the room was unbearable. I could hear Chelsea's accelerated breathing, Michael's contained sobs, the nervous murmuring of the executives. "Mr. Sterling," Andrew began, "there is something else you need to know about your wife." Michael lifted his head. His eyes were swollen, his face shattered. "What else can there be? I already discovered she lied to me, committed fraud, stole our savings. What else?" Andrew turned the laptop so everyone could see the screen. A photograph appeared. Chelsea with a man. Not just any man. A man about 50 years old. Attractive, well-dressed. They were at a hotel entrance. He had his arm around her waist. She was leaning into him with a familiarity that left no doubt. Michael froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Chelsea screamed from the floor. "No! Turn that off! You have no right!" Andrew ignored her protest. He continued to scroll through photographs. Chelsea and the man kissing in a restaurant. Entering an apartment building together. Holding hands in a park. Each image was a dagger in my son's heart. "His name is Richard Vance," Andrew said. "Owner of the Grand Union restaurant chain. 52 years old. Married, 3 children. And your wife's lover for the last 2 years. 2 years." The words echoed in the room like a sentence. Michael finally found his voice. 2 years. He looked at the photographs again, as if searching for some sign that they were fake, that this was another mistake. But there was no mistake. The truth was there, raw and brutal. Chelsea got up, staggering. She reached out her hands toward Michael. "Darling, please, let me explain. It's not what it looks like." He backed away as if she were contaminated. "Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me." Andrew continued, relentless. "We have hotel records, 27 nights at different establishments over the last 2 years. We have text messages, emails, and recordings of phone conversations." He pressed a button. Chelsea's voice filled the room, coming from the laptop speakers. It was a recording of a phone call. "The old man won't last much longer. The doctors gave him weeks. As soon as he dies, Michael will inherit everything. The old lady is easy to manipulate. She'll sign anything just to avoid a fight with her son." I watched the colour completely drain from Michael's face. He clung to the edge of the table so he wouldn't fall. Richard's voice responded on the recording. "And after that, my love? How much longer do we have to keep up this charade?" Chelsea's laugh sounded cruel, calculating. "A few more months. I need to make sure everything is in Michael's name first. Then you and I are out. We'll sell the properties, liquidate what we can of the company, and disappear. Michael will be left with the crumbs. He's so naive he won't even know what hit him. Andrew stopped the recording. The silence that followed was devastating. No one moved. No one breathed. Everyone looked at Michael, waiting for his reaction. My son slowly turned to Chelsea. His expression was something I had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It wasn't pain. It was something much darker. It was the moment a person realizes their entire life has been a lie. "Crumbs," he said in a hollow voice. "You were going to leave me with crumbs." Chelsea was crying uncontrollably now. "Please, Michael, let me explain. I love you. I really do love you. Richard means nothing. It was just a mistake. A stupid thing." "Shut up." Michael's shout made everyone jump. I had never heard him yell like that. 2 years. You were with that man for 2 years while I worked like an idiot thinking we were building a future together. While my father was dying of cancer, you were planning how to rob us. Chelsea reached out her hands to him. "Michael, please." But he completely ignored her. He turned to me. In his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen since he was a little boy. Shame, regret, pain. "Mum." His voice broke. I didn't know. You have to believe me. I thought the will was real. I thought Dad had decided to leave me the company. I thought Chelsea loved me. I thought so many things, and they were all lies." I walked toward him. Each step was difficult because my heart was divided between the relief that my son hadn't been the mastermind behind all this and the pain of seeing him like this, shattered, betrayed. I put my hand on his cheek. He was much taller than me, but at that moment he looked like a lost child. "I know, Michael. I know." He collapsed. He fell to his knees in front of me and began to cry, as he hadn't cried since Robert's funeral. "I'm sorry, I am so sorry. How could I be so blind? How could I leave you alone after Dad died? How could I believe I deserved something you built? How could I treat you like that?" I stroked his hair. Despite everything, despite the pain he had caused me, he was still my son. "It's not all your fault. You were manipulated. Chelsea took advantage of your grief, your ambition, your love for your father. But Michael, you need to understand something. You weren't the only one affected. I lost my husband. I went through that pain. And on top of that, I had to discover that my own son was willing to leave me with nothing. That is your responsibility." Michael nodded without lifting his head. "You're right. I have no excuse. I was a terrible son, a terrible man." Andrew interrupted. "Mrs. Miller, there's something else." I looked up. "What else?" Andrew pressed another button on the laptop. A document appeared. "It's a bank record. An account in Chelsea Sterling's name in the Bahamas, opened 8 months ago. The current balance is $230,000. The murmurs in the room turned into exclamations of shock. Michael suddenly stood up. $230,000? Where did you get that money?" Chelsea didn't answer. She was backing against the wall again, sliding down. Andrew continued. "According to our analysis, the money comes from multiple sources. 50,000 from the joint savings account you shared with Mr. Sterling. 80,000 from bonuses Mr. Sterling received during the last 2 years and which he deposited into accounts she managed. And 100,000 that were transferred from Sterling Logistics corporate accounts using falsified authorizations with Mr. Sterling's signature." One of the executives stood up. "Are you saying she committed embezzlement?" Andrew nodded. "Exactly. And we have all the documentary evidence. We have already filed the corresponding complaint with the authorities." Chelsea began to hyperventilate. She was hugging herself, rocking back and forth. No, no, this can't be happening. This wasn't part of the plan. It had to work. It had to work. Carol spoke from her seat. And Richard? Did he know about all this? Andrew nodded. Mr. Vance is being investigated as an accomplice. According to the conversations we intercepted, he was perfectly aware of Chelsea's plan. In fact, he was the one who connected her with Vincent Moretti, the corrupt lawyer. Apparently, Moretti had done similar work for Vance in the past. Michael slumped into a chair. He covered his face with his hands. How could I be so stupid? All the signs were there. The sudden business trips. The calls she cut off when I entered the room. The money disappearing from our accounts. I walked over to him and put my hand on his shoulder. Love blinds us, Michael, especially when we want to believe in someone. He looked up. In his eyes, I saw something beyond pain. I saw determination. Mum, what's going to happen now? With the company, with the properties, with you? I looked at Andrew. He took out another document. Mr. Sterling, your mother and I have discussed this extensively. Despite everything that has happened, she wants to offer you an opportunity. Michael looked at me in surprise. Why? After everything I did to you, why? Because you are my son. Because despite your mistakes, despite letting yourself be manipulated, I believe deep down you are still the man your father and I raised. But this comes with conditions. Andrew placed the document in front of Michael. Mrs. Miller retains 70% of the shares in Sterling Logistics and will remain the president and CEO. You will keep your position as director of operations, but you will report directly to her. Your salary will be reduced by 40% for the next 2 years as compensation for the money Chelsea stole using your name. Michael nodded immediately. I accept. Whatever it takes. Andrew continued. The properties remain in your mother's name. You and your future ex-wife must vacate the house you currently occupy within 30 days. Your mother is offering you an apartment in one of the company's buildings where you can live for a reasonable rent. Michael nodded again. That's fine. More than fair. And finally, Andrew continued, you must attend family therapy with your mother for at least 1 year to rebuild trust, to heal the relationship. Michael looked at me with tears in his eyes. Would you really do that for me, after all that? I held his gaze. You are my son. You will always be my son. But this does not mean everything is forgiven or forgotten. It means I am willing to give you a chance to redeem yourself, to show that you can be better, to rebuild what was broken. He nodded, unable to speak. Tears rolled down his face uncontrollably. Chelsea, from the floor, shouted with a voice full of desperation. Michael, you can't abandon me. I'm your wife. You promised to love me for better or for worse. My son turned to her. His expression was pure ice. You are not my wife. You were a lie from day one. And as soon as I leave here, I'm going to start divorce proceedings. I never want to see you again in my life. Chelsea tried to stand up, but her legs couldn't support her. She stayed there, kneeling, the emerald green dress wrinkled and stained, her smeared makeup forming black streaks down her face. Please, she pleaded, I have nowhere to go. I have nothing. Richard left me. When he found out everything had gone wrong, he blocked me everywhere. Please, Michael. He looked at her with a mix of contempt and pity. You should have thought about that before you betrayed me, before you betrayed my family, before you stole, before you lied. Now you're going to have to face the consequences of your actions. At that moment, footsteps were heard in the hallway. Heavy footsteps, multiple. The boardroom door opened and 2 police officers entered. One of them, a man in his 40s with a serious expression, looked around the room. "We are looking for Chelsea Sterling." Chelsea let out a choked scream. She tried to get up as if to run away, but there was nowhere to go. The officer approached her. "Mrs. Chelsea Sterling, you are under arrest for the crimes of document forgery, fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be appointed to you. Do you understand these rights?" Chelsea sobbed uncontrollably as the officer placed the handcuffs on her. "This is your fault," she yelled, looking at me with hatred. "You did this to me. If you weren't so selfish, if you shared what you have, none of this would have happened." I approached her. The officers looked at me cautiously, but didn't stop me. I was inches from her face. "I didn't do anything to you, Chelsea. You chose to lie. You chose to steal. You chose to betray my son and my family. These consequences are the result of your own decisions. No one else is to blame." She spat toward me. It didn't reach me. One of the officers held her more tightly. "That's enough. Let's go." They led her out of the room while she screamed threats and insults. Her voice faded down the hallway until finally only silence remained. A heavy silence, full of relief and exhaustion. Michael was still sitting, his head in his hands. The executives were starting to move, whispering among themselves, processing everything they had just witnessed. Carol came up to me and hugged me tightly. "You did it," she whispered in my ear. "You defended what was yours. You defended your legacy." I hugged her back, allowing myself to be held by my lifelong friend. I was exhausted, emotionally and physically drained, but I also felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. The truth had finally come to light. Andrew approached Michael and held out the document. "If you agree with the terms, I need you to sign here. It's a revised employment contract and a remediation agreement." Michael took the pen with a trembling hand and signed without even reading. "I trust whatever my mother decides. I no longer have the right to question anything." I approached him again. "Michael, this doesn't mean I don't love you. It means love comes with responsibility and consequences." He nodded. "I understand, Mum, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving to you that I can be better, that I can be the son you deserve." One of the executives, David Henderson, the chief financial officer who had confirmed my position in the company, stood up. "Mrs. Miller, if I may, all of us here knew the truth. We knew who was really running this company, and I want you to know you have our total support. Sterling Logistics is what it is because of you, and we will continue working under your leadership with the same commitment as always." Other executives nodded and murmured words of support. I felt something in my chest loosen. For months, I had carried the weight of this situation alone. And now, finally, everything's resolved. The meeting slowly dissolved. Executives left in small groups, still commenting quietly on what they had witnessed. I knew this story would become a legend in business circles. The widow who defended her empire against her own family. Carol stayed with me. Michael did too. Andrew was putting all the documents back into his briefcase. "What's next?" Carol asked. "Now," I replied, "I'm going home. I'm going to make some tea. And I'm going to sleep for the first time in months without feeling like I'm at war." Carol smiled. "I'll go with you. I think we both need to process all this." Michael stood up. "Mum, can I go with you? Just to talk, to start making things right." I looked at him for a long moment. I saw the child he had been, the young man full of promises, and the broken man in front of me now. a man who had made terrible mistakes, but who seemed genuinely regretful. Yes, you can come. But Michael, this is going to take time. I can't just forget everything that happened. He nodded. I know. I don't expect you to forget. I just hope you give me the chance to prove to you that I can change. The three of us left the boardroom. Andrew said goodbye in the elevator, promising to send me all the final documents in the next few days. He also mentioned he would be in contact with the district attorney's office to follow the case against Chelsea and her accomplices. In the parking lot, Carol suggested we all go in my car. Michael wasn't in a condition to drive, and she wanted to make sure we arrived safely. The drive home was silent. I was in the passenger seat, looking out the window as the city passed before my eyes. Michael was in the back, lost in his own thoughts. When we arrived at the house, that house that I had bought over 40 years ago, I felt a surge of emotion. This was my house, it always had been, and no one was going to take it from me. We went inside, and Carol went straight to the kitchen to prepare the tea. Michael and I sat in the living room, the same place where, weeks earlier, he had told me I should move to the guest house. Mum, he began with a hesitant voice, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did Dad and you decide to keep it a secret that you were the real owner of the company? Why not just tell everyone the truth from the beginning? I sighed. It was a decision we made together when we started. In the 70s, a woman leading a logistics company wasn't well regarded. Clients, especially the big ones, preferred to deal with men. Your father was charismatic. He was a natural salesman. So we decided he would be the public face while I handled the operations from behind. It worked better than we imagined. But didn't you ever want the recognition? Didn't it ever bother you that everyone thought Dad was the genius behind everything? Michael seemed genuinely curious. I laughed softly. At first, yes. I won't lie. There were times I wanted to shout the truth. But then I understood that public recognition wasn't what was important. What was important was the work, the results, the satisfaction of building something solid. Your father always gave me credit in private. That was enough. Michael shook his head. You are stronger than I ever imagined, and I was an idiot to underestimate you. Carol arrived with a tray with 3 cups of tea. She sat on the armchair next to me. Well, she said with her direct style, now that everything is out in the open, what are you going to do, Ellie? With the company? With your life? With everything? I took a sip of tea, letting the warmth comfort me. I'm going to continue running the company. I'm going to make sure Michael gets the training he needs, so that someday, maybe, he's ready for a role with greater responsibility. But that's going to take years, and it will depend entirely on whether he proves he can change. Michael nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. Carol looked at me with a smile. And personally, you've been carrying so much for so long. Don't you think it's time for you to live a little? To travel? To enjoy what you built? I leaned back in the armchair. Maybe. I've been thinking about traveling to Europe. Your father and I always wanted to go, but we never had the time. Perhaps now is the time. Michael spoke softly. Dad would be proud of you, of how you handled all this, of how you gave me another chance despite everything. I felt tears threatening to come out. Your father was a good man. Michael made mistakes, like everyone, but he always tried to do the right thing. I hope you can learn from him, from his virtues and from his mistakes. We remained in silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. It was getting dark outside. It had been a long, intense day. 2 weeks passed since that day in the boardroom. 2 weeks in which everything began to settle into place. Chelsea was still in custody, awaiting trial. Her defense lawyer had tried to negotiate a plea deal, But the prosecution had too much evidence against her: embezzlement, document forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud. The charges were serious, and the consequences were too. Richard Vance had also been arrested. His wife had filed for divorce immediately, and his children had issued a public statement disassociating themselves from him. His restaurant empire was in crisis. Several partners had withdrawn their investments, and 2 of his biggest locations had closed. The fall had been fast and brutal. Vincent Moretti, the corrupt lawyer, had accepted a deal with the prosecution in exchange for testifying against Chelsea and Richard. He would receive a reduced sentence, but would still spend several years in prison. Michael had kept his word. He moved out of the house he shared with Chelsea and into the apartment I had offered him. It was a modest space compared to what he was used to, but it was enough. He had also started therapy, both individual and family sessions with me. The first session had been difficult, painful. He had to truly face what he had done, how he had treated me, how he had been willing to leave me with nothing. I had to face my own pain, my feeling of betrayal, the breakdown of trust between mother and son. But it had also been liberating. For the first time in years, we were being completely honest with each other. At work, Michael had changed. He arrived early, left late. He asked questions instead of giving orders. He listened to employees he had previously ignored. He asked for my opinion on every important decision and accepted my corrections without resentment. The executives had noticed the change. David Henderson, the chief financial officer, had commented to me that several employees had mentioned how different Mr. Sterling looked: more humble, more focused. One afternoon, 2 weeks after the confrontation, I received an unexpected call. It was from a reporter from a major business magazine. She had heard rumors about what had happened at Sterling Logistics and wanted to do an interview. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't someone who sought public attention, but after talking with Andrew and Carol, I decided to accept. It was time for my story to come out. It was time for other women to know it was possible to build, lead, and defend what was theirs. The interview was published 3 weeks later with the title Eleanor Miller, the Invisible Woman Behind the Sterling Empire. The article told the whole story: my inheritance, the company's founding, the agreement with Robert, the decades of silent work, and finally the betrayal and how I faced it. The response was overwhelming. I received hundreds of messages from businesswomen, widows, mothers who had gone through similar situations. Some had been stripped of their businesses by their own children. Others had been rendered invisible for years by husbands who took all the credit. I was invited to give talks at universities, business conferences, and events for women entrepreneurs. At first, I rejected most of them, but Carol convinced me to accept a few. The first was at a local university. There were about 200 students in the auditorium, mostly young women studying business administration. When I finished telling my story, a girl about 20 years old raised her hand. Her question surprised me. "Mrs. Miller, don't you regret being in the shadows for so many years? Don't you think that if you had been the public face from the beginning, all of this could have been avoided?" I thought about her question for a long moment before answering. Maybe you're right. Maybe if I had been more visible, more vocal about my role in the company, things would have been different. But I also believe every generation has its battles. In my time, a woman at the head of a logistics company was almost impossible. I had to adapt, find another way to lead. You have opportunities that I didn't have, and I hope you take advantage of them, that you don't have to hide, that you demand the recognition you deserve from the start. The applause was long and sincere. After the talk, several young women approached me to thank me. One of them, with tears in her eyes, told me her mother had gone through something similar and that my story gave her hope that things could change. A month after the scandal, Michael asked me to have lunch together. We went to a small restaurant near the offices, a quiet place where we could talk without interruptions. "Mum," he began after ordering, "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, about who I was and who I want to be." I looked at him, waiting for him to continue. I was blinded by ambition, by ego, by the desire to be like Dad. But I never stopped to think that what I admired about Dad wasn't just his success, but his humility, his ability to recognize that you were the real force behind everything. I took a sip of water. "Go on." "Chelsea saw that blindness and exploited it. But that doesn't absolve me of responsibility. I chose to believe the lies because they were convenient, because they made me feel important, because I wanted to be the hero of my own story, no matter who I hurt in the process." His honesty moved me. "I appreciate you acknowledging that." He nodded. "I want to be better, not just professionally, but as a person, as a son. And I know that's going to take years, but I'm committed." I took his hand across the table. "Michael, the fact that you are here, saying these things, is already a huge step. I don't expect perfection. I expect genuine effort, and that's what you're showing." We had lunch in peace, talking about simple things, how therapy was going, new projects at the company, small, everyday moments. It was something we hadn't done in years, just being together without tension, without ulterior motives. 2 months after the confrontation, Chelsea's trial began. I only attended the first day. I didn't want to be present for the whole process. Seeing her there, in the prison uniform, without makeup, with unkempt hair, was shocking. She looked like a completely different person. Her lawyer tried to argue she had been manipulated by Richard, that she was a victim too, but the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings of her conversations clearly showed she was an active participant, not a victim. The trial lasted 3 weeks. In the end, Chelsea was found guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison, with no possibility of parole until she served at least 5. Richard received 10 years. When Andrew called me with the news, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because justice had been served. Sadness because lives had been destroyed. Because my son had been deceived and betrayed. Because in the end, no one truly wins in these situations. 3 months after everything, Carol and I were sitting in my living room having coffee on a Saturday afternoon. She had brought chocolate layer cake, my favorite. "So," she said with that mischievous smile I knew so well, "when are we going to Europe?" I laughed. "Are you serious?" "Completely, Ellie. You've spent your whole life working, building, taking care of others. Robert is gone. Michael is finding his way. The company is solid. It's your moment. It's your time to live." I looked at her affectionately. Carol had been my rock throughout this storm, my unconditional friend since we were kids. "You're right. We're going. Let's plan that trip." Carol's eyes lit up. "Seriously?" "Yes. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, all the places Robert and I dreamed of visiting. We'll go, and we'll raise a toast to him in every city." Carol lifted her coffee cup. "To Robert, to you, and to second chances." We clinked our cups. "To new beginnings," I added. That night, after Carol left, I sat in the study Robert and I shared. The walls were full of photos of our life together. The wedding, Michael's birth, trips, company celebrations. I stopped in front of a photo of Robert and me taken about 10 years ago. We were in the office, late at night, surrounded by documents, He was looking at me with that expression of admiration he always had when we talked business. I did the right thing, I said to the photo. I defended what we built, but I also gave our son a chance. I think you'd be proud. The silence of the house was comforting. I no longer felt the weight I had carried for months. The truth had come out. Justice had been served. And I had reclaimed my place. Not just as Robert Sterling's widow, not just as Michael's mother, but as Eleanor Miller, the woman who had built an empire and had the courage to defend it when necessary. 6 months had passed since that day in the boardroom. 6 months of rebuilding, of healing, of profound changes. The company was stronger than ever. We had closed 3 major contracts with international clients. The numbers were in the green, and the work environment had improved remarkably. Michael had proven worthy of the second chance I gave him. Every day he arrived before anyone else and left last. He had implemented a training program for young employees that was yielding excellent results. And most importantly, he had learned to listen. He was no longer the arrogant man who thought he had all the answers. Now he asked questions, sought opinions, admitted when he was wrong. The employees had begun to respect him not for his last name, but for his work. One morning, Michael entered my office with a serious expression. "Mum, I need to talk to you about something important." I took off my glasses and closed the laptop. "Sure, sit down." He sat across from my desk, nervous, fiddling with his hands. "I've been thinking about the future, about my future, and I think I need to do more than just work in the company." I looked at him with curiosity. "What do you have in mind?" "I want to go back to school, a master's in business administration, but for real this time. Not just for the degree, but to learn, to be better at what I do, so that someday, if you deem it appropriate, I can truly help you run this company the right way." I felt something warm expand in my chest. "That is an excellent idea." He smiled shyly. "I also want to start volunteering. There's an organization that helps men who have been victims of abusive or manipulative relationships. I think my experience could help others see the signs I missed." I got up from my chair and walked around the desk to hug him. "I am so proud of you. Truly. Your father would be proud too." Michael hugged me back tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Mum, thank you for giving me this chance when I didn't deserve it. You will always be my son, and sons deserve second chances. But Michael, you've done something many don't do. You've admitted your mistakes, you've worked to change, and you've proven it with actions, not just words. That's what makes the difference." That afternoon, Andrew came to the office with news. "Ellie, I have updates on the case. Chelsea's appeal was rejected. The sentence stands, 8 years. I nodded. "And Richard?" "Same. His appeal was also rejected. Furthermore, his ex-wife won the divorce case. She was awarded full custody of the children and 80% of the assets. He's going to come out of prison with virtually nothing." "Justice sometimes works," I said with a sad smile. Andrew nodded. "I also want to inform you that several purchase offers have come in for the company. International companies interested in acquiring Sterling Logistics. The figures are impressive." I looked out my office window toward the production floor. I could see the employees working, moving with purpose and dedication. This company was more than just numbers on a paper. It was the legacy of 4 decades of work. "I am not selling," I said firmly. Andrew smiled. "I imagined you would say that. But I wanted you to know the option exists. If you ever decide to truly retire, there are interested buyers. I'll keep it in mind. But for now, this company remains mine. And someday, if Michael proves he's ready, it will be his too." A week later, Carol and I were at the airport, 2 suitcases each, first-class tickets to Paris, a month-long tour of Europe that we had meticulously planned. Michael came to see us off. He carried a bouquet of flowers and an envelope. "For you, Mum. Open it on the plane." I hugged him. "Take care of the company while I'm gone. I trust you." His eyes filled with tears. "I won't let you down. I promise." "I know. You've already proven it." Carol and I went through security. In the waiting lounge, I opened the envelope Michael had given me. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Mum," the letter began, "I don't have enough words to thank you for everything you've done for me. Not just for giving me this second chance, but for a lifetime of sacrifices that I never knew how to appreciate. You built an empire and allowed Dad to shine because you valued his happiness more than public recognition. That is true love. I spent years believing that success was measured in titles and power. Now I understand that true success is measured in integrity, in how we treat others, in the legacy we leave behind. You are my hero, not Dad, although I loved him deeply. You, the woman who built everything and had the courage to defend it when necessary. The woman who forgave her son even when he didn't deserve it. Enjoy this trip. Live, laugh. Raise a toast to Dad in every city you visit. And when you return, I promise you will find an even stronger company, because I will work every day to honor your trust. I love you, Mum. I always will. Your son, Michael." Tears rolled down my face as I finished reading. Carol passed me a tissue. "He's a good kid. He just needed to find his way." Yes, he is, and I think he's finally finding it. The flight was long but comfortable. I slept most of the way, something I hadn't done in years. When we arrived in Paris, the sun was rising. The city looked golden, magical. Carol and I took a taxi to the hotel. After settling in and resting for a few hours, we went for a walk. We visited the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, Notre Dame. In each place, I took out the small urn I carried in my purse. It contained a portion of Robert's ashes. At the Eiffel Tower, as the sun set, I opened the urn and let the wind carry some of the ashes. "Here we are, Robert, just as we always dreamed. I love you and I miss you every day. But I'm okay. Our company is okay. Our son is finding his way. You can rest in peace." Carol was by my side, holding my hand. We did the same in Rome, at the Trevi Fountain, in Barcelona, in front of the Sagrada Familia. In every city, a small ritual of farewell and gratitude. The trip was transformative. For the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking about the company, about problems, about responsibilities. I was just enjoying myself. I ate well, slept well, laughed with Carol, remembering our youth. We met interesting people. In Florence, an Italian artist invited us to his studio and showed us his paintings. In Venice, an elderly couple told us their 60-year love story. Each encounter was a reminder that life was much more than work and responsibilities, that there was beauty, connection, joy waiting to be discovered. One night, in a small restaurant in Rome, Carol raised her glass of wine. "To Ellie, to the strongest woman I know, to the woman who not only built an empire, but had the courage to defend it and the wisdom to forgive." We clinked our glasses. To friendship, to new beginnings, to living the life we deserve. That night, as we walked back to the hotel through the cobblestone streets of Rome, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt whole. I didn't need external validation. I didn't need the world to know my story. Not anymore. I had defended what was mine. I had reclaimed my place. I had forgiven my son. I had honored my husband's memory. And now, finally, I was living for me. When we returned home a month later, Michael was waiting for us at the airport. He had flowers and a genuine smile. "Welcome home, Mum. I missed you." "I missed you too. How is everything?" "Everything is perfect. The company is better than ever, and I have many things to show you. But that can wait. Today, I just want you to rest." A year had passed since that day in the boardroom, a full year of transformation, of healing, of growth. It was a Friday afternoon, and I was in my office reviewing the quarterly reports. The numbers were extraordinary. Sterling Logistics had grown by 35%. We had opened 2 new branches, one in Colombia and another in Chile. The team was motivated, committed, working with an energy I hadn't seen in years. Michael knocked on the door before entering. He was carrying a folder and an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "Mum, I have something to show you." "Come in. Sit down." He placed the folder in front of me. Inside was an extensive document, full of graphs, financial projections, market analysis. "It's my thesis project for the master's program. But it's also a real proposal for the company, an expansion that could double our revenue in 3 years." I reviewed the document carefully. It was impressively well-researched, well-structured, with realistic projections and solid strategies. "This is excellent work, Michael. Truly." He smiled, but there was nervousness in his eyes. "There's something else." At the end of the document, I flipped through the pages until I reached the last section. It was a formal letter addressed to me. In it, Michael proposed a restructuring of his position in the company. He asked to be transferred to the new business development department with a lower salary than he currently had, to focus on learning from the ground up how all the areas worked before aspiring to positions of greater leadership. I looked up. He was looking at me with absolute seriousness. "You want to start over? From the bottom?" He nodded. "This year, I've learned that I can't lead what I don't fully understand. I've been in operations, yes, but there are entire departments of this company that I've never really known. I want to spend time in every area: logistics, finance, human resources, sales. I want to understand how each piece contributes to the whole, and only then, if you consider that I am ready, maybe I can aspire to a role with greater responsibility." I closed the document and looked him directly in the eyes. "Do you know that this will mean less money, less prestige, practically starting from scratch?" "I know, and I'm ready. I no longer need the title or the salary to feel valuable. I need the knowledge. I need to truly earn it." I stood up and walked around the desk. I hugged him hard. "This is exactly what your father would have done. He was never afraid to get his hands dirty, to learn, to start from the bottom when necessary. I am so proud of you." In the following months, Michael kept his word. I saw him working in the warehouse, loading boxes, learning the inventory systems. I saw him in the finance department, reviewing every number, asking questions. I saw him in sales, accompanying representatives on their client visits. And in every area, he left a positive impression. Employees commented on how different he was, how he listened, how he learned, how he had left his ego at the door. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call. It was from the correctional facility where Chelsea was being held. "Mrs. Chelsea Sterling has requested a visit with you. She wants to talk." My first instinct was to refuse. What could that woman possibly have to say to me? But after thinking about it for several days, I decided to go. I needed to close that chapter completely. The correctional facility was a cold, impersonal place. I was led through several security checkpoints before being taken to a visitation room. Chelsea was sitting on the other side of a metal table. She looked completely different. Without makeup, with short, unkempt hair, the grey prison uniform. She had lost weight and looked older than her 38 years. "Thank you for coming," she said in a dull voice. "You didn't have to." I sat down across from her. "Why did you want to see me, Chelsea?" She looked at her hands for a long moment before speaking. "Because I need to tell you I'm sorry. I know those words mean nothing coming from me. I know they don't erase what I did. But I needed to say it face to face." I looked at her without expression. "Continue." "I was wrong. About everything. About you. About Michael. About what truly matters in life. I grew up poor. Very poor. And when I saw the life Michael had, the company, the properties, the money, I could only think that I deserved a part of that. I convinced myself that you were selfish for having so much, that I had the right to take whatever I wanted." Her eyes filled with tears. "But I didn't understand that all of that was built with decades of work, of sacrifice, of dedication. It wasn't luck. It wasn't theft. It was genuine effort. And I tried to steal it from you in a matter of months." I listened to her in silence. I didn't interrupt her. "I also betrayed Michael, a man who truly loved me, who gave me everything he had. And I cheated on him. I used him. I planned to abandon him. There is no excuse for that. None." She took a deep breath. "I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that every day in here, I think about what I did, about the lives I ruined, about the opportunity I wasted to have a real family, a husband who loved me, an honest life, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life." I let the silence stretch for a moment. "Chelsea, I appreciate that you've found some clarity here. I appreciate you acknowledging the harm you caused. But you are right about one thing. I cannot forgive you. Not now. Maybe never. What you did wasn't just stealing or lying. It was trying to destroy my family. It was manipulating my son. It was trying to take what I built over an entire lifetime." She nodded, tears running freely now. "I understand. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. Truly." I stood up. "Chelsea, you have several more years here. Use that time to truly change, to become a better person. Not for me or for Michael. For you. Because when you get out, you'll have to live with who you are. Make sure it's someone you can live with." I left feeling strangely light. I hadn't forgiven Chelsea, but I no longer carried any anger toward her either. I had simply closed that door. 2 months later, the company was celebrating its 45th anniversary. We organized a big event in the building's main hall. Current and former employees, partners, clients, friends, more than 300 people. I was at the podium, ready to give a speech. I looked at the audience. I saw Michael in the front row, smiling with pride. I saw Carol next to him. I saw Andrew, my lawyer and friend. I saw all the executives who had worked with me for years. "Good evening, everyone." 45 years ago, a 23-year-old woman inherited a considerable sum of money and decided not to spend it on luxuries or comforts. She decided to invest it in a dream. The dream of building something solid, something lasting, something that could provide jobs for families and contribute to the economy. I paused. That young woman was me, and that dream became sterling logistics. There were murmurs of surprise. Many in the audience didn't know the full story. For decades, my husband Robert was the face of this company, and he did it wonderfully. But today, I want everyone to know the truth. This company was founded by me, built by both of us, and defended by me when necessary. The applause began slowly, and then turned into a standing ovation. I have learned many lessons in these 45 years. I learned that real success is not measured in titles or public recognition. It is measured in the impact you have on the lives of others. I learned that leadership is not about imposing your will, it is about serving your team. I learned that forgiveness is not forgetting. It is releasing the weight of resentment so you can move forward. I looked directly at Michael, and I learned that second chances, when given to the right people, can transform lives. My son made mistakes, big mistakes, but he had the courage to acknowledge them, the humility to apologize, and the discipline to work for change. And that is all we can ask of any human being. Michael had tears in his eyes. This company will continue to grow. It will continue to innovate. And someday, when I decide the time is right, it will pass into the hands of the next generation. But it will be because that generation will have earned it. Not by last name, not by inheritance, by merit. I raised my glass. To Sterling Logistics, to everyone who has contributed to its success, to the 45 years past and the many years to come. Everyone raised their glasses. To Sterling Logistics. The party continued late into the night. Music, dancing, laughter. I stayed until the end, enjoying every moment, because this was mine. I had built it, I had defended it, and now I was celebrating it. When I finally got home that night, I sat in the study. I looked at the photos on the wall. Robert and I, young and full of dreams. Michael as a baby. The family we had built. I took out my journal, something I had started doing during therapy. I wrote, "Today we celebrate 45 years. 45 years of work, of sacrifice, of love, of loss, of betrayal, of forgiveness, of growth. I have been many things in my life. Wife, mother, businesswoman, widow. But today, finally, I am simply Eleanor, a woman who knows her worth, who defends what is hers, who forgives when possible, and who lives without asking permission from anyone. Robert, wherever you are, I hope you are proud. Michael is finding his way. The company is stronger than ever, and I, finally, am at peace." I closed the journal and turned off the light. Tomorrow would be another day. There would be new challenges, new opportunities, new adventures. But tonight, I slept peacefully. Because I had fought my battle, I had defended my legacy, and I had won. Not because I had destroyed my enemies, but because I had remained true to myself. And in the end, that was the only thing that truly mattered. That night, I dreamed of Robert. We were young again, dancing at our wedding. He whispered in my ear, "I always knew you were stronger than me. That's why I loved you so much. Take care of our legacy. Take care of our son. And above all, take care of yourself." I woke up with a smile. The sun was streaming through the window. It was a new day, and I was ready for whatever came next.